Hey guys, Stealth here. By special request, a game with an East German deck. Now I really rarely use these. When I'm playing Red 4, I always go for USSR, sometimes China mechanized, but that's really all I play. I don't really touch the other nations that Red 4 has to offer. But by special request, someone asked me if I could do an East Germany deck, as well as showing off some gameplay, so that's what I'm going to be doing here. I'm doing a 1v1 on one of the newer maps against Schnitzel Muffin. Now this game, I'm not playing it very well. Let me start out with that. Schnitzel was doing a really good job as far as the pushing was concerned. I did pretty terrible, but later in the game we're going to have some interesting turns of events. Now the command units that I have in this deck is one command unit in a helicopter and one command tank. I had a few extra activation points because it's a single nation deck. And with that you can again of course spend it anywhere you like, but I spent it on another command vehicle. So I can do infantry pushes or helicopter rushes, as well as going into a zone which is more heavily defended. My first objectives on this map are to capture the forests in Bravo and make sure I can quickly get a presence in Echo, preferably there. I have LSTR 40s in my deck, which can be really quickly deployed to this position, provide anti-tank and anti-air capability, and pretty much wait for the main force to catch up. The main force, insofar as I have points for that, is going to consist of one T-72S, two T-55s, a recon unit or two, as well as a Flacom Tor. I went with a Tor because the Tor can do both anti-helicopter and anti-airplane defense. That's what I needed for this section. I'm using one command infantry to push over into center, get more income as quickly as possible. And you can see that I dropped off my infantry here. Now the infantry, of course, since it is in a helicopter, it cannot exactly be inside a forest right away. And that's a bit of a risk, because sometimes you're going to have to move your infantry, or you're going to have to move your CV like that. See, I just did it right now. The risk with that is that a very observant player is now going to go, oh, okay, he moved his CV. He might be using his infantry CV and getting it into cover. And that's exactly what I did. So if you see someone losing their main base for a little while, let's say a few seconds, that might be an infantry CV. So use that little clue to see if it might be an infantry CV or a main CV. So let's say a vehicle. Now in the meanwhile, my LSTRs are pushing into position and they're immediately getting sniped by a gun tank and a short arrow. You can see the gun tank opening up there. I'm trying to get my helicopter away from the battle as quickly as possible, because I do not want my LSTR shot down. And thankfully, due to the speed of this thing, which is 250, I can pretty quickly get away. Splitting off my T-72 to try and get some spots here and try to get some sniping shots into the flanks of these vehicles as they're rushing this tree line. But unfortunately I just couldn't see them in time. In the meanwhile, I lost one of the LSTRs, and over on the left side here, over on the right and the left flank of Boris, I'm defending myself against some oncoming infantry with two groups of Wachregiment over on the right and one on the left. Because these guys are not that great against vehicles, their anti-tank capability is pretty low. But what they can do very well is deal with infantry, and especially since they're a 15-man squad, they can survive for quite a long time. Now, I have two zones. I have center and Dimitri, so I got a decent amount of income, but I want more. So, another helicopter coming in, trying to capture Cheriton with command infantry. In the meanwhile, I've offloaded my LSTRs, at least the surviving group, and I'm pushing those into the forest. They're a sort of last resort holding force, in case that either the Flacom goes down or the vehicles in here go down, and they can still be a little bit of a surprise if you have, let's say, a push coming this way. In the meanwhile, my forces are getting hammered, and this is something that Schnitzel did really well. He used Kyoroku WAPCs. If you're not familiar with these little bastards, they're pretty hard to kill. And they have a grenade launcher, and they're very quick. This means that my infantry is very quickly getting suppressed, and you can see that this group went from 15 to 1 in almost no time at all. And, of course, I lost that position. I'm gearing up with some SFL 57-2s, those very outdated and old AA guns. And in the meanwhile, I'm pulling my Igla infantry back. The the infantry is no deal for any kind of grenade launcher vehicle, or just base infantry anyway. Fortunately, I got spotted by a Hachi Nanashiki. You can see that the infantry just went down there. In the meanwhile, my left flank was also taking a lot of fire. I lost another transport, and these groups of 17 units of shock infantry, no, regular infantry, were really kicking the crap out of my Wachregiment. So this flank is lost. And I'm instantly pulling back my infantry with anti-air units to make sure that I can put up a secondary defense line right there. There's no real point in trying to either use my infantry to attack there or to send the vehicles to a useless death, because even if I kill a few more of these guys, they're not going to go down altogether. So it's not really a point to push in there, try to kill them, and then pull back again. So what I'm instead doing is reinforcing this position, because if you want to get to this town, you're first going to have to cross a little bit of open ground, which, if my infantry is in a building, is going to make it very difficult for them to push up. So instead of just trying to reinforce this forest, where the distance between the two forests is really not that much, you can really do a quickly hop over here. Instead, I'm just reinforcing the position which is more easily defendable. And if I have enough critical mass at some point, I'm able to push out through the forests anyway. But for now, that's not really what I want to do. Now this SFL went a bit too far. You can see I'm slamming on the brakes and get it into a different position, because if it just carries on going down the road, there's a very high chance it's going to run into either the recon vehicle that's up there or more infantry, and it's just going to get sniped. So instead of keeping them here, these things, if they go down, I'm not too sad about it. They're only worth a few points. They're only 20 points to buy. They have a little bit of armor, so they can possibly take a tank round and not go down. And at the same time, if the infantry does come to the edge of the forest, they're going to get hammered and probably suppressed. Now I had two empty transport helicopters over on the left, and I decided to just try and make a break for it. Just try and see what I could find and if he had any kind of defenses over here. Normally I park them, but this time I went a bit on the offensive, which wasn't really a bad idea, but I just didn't have enough follow-up. The helicopters that I'm using is an Mi-8 and an Mi-8T. So the T version is only armed with the rocket pods. The TV is more heavily armed with more rockets and a machine gun. Although this one is already damaged, so I gotta be careful with that one. But again, if they go down, I don't mind, because I'm creating a distraction here, so I can focus and push up there. In the meanwhile, I knew that there was a gun tank, and he had not deactivated his radar, so my seed aircraft was able to take care of the gun tank right there. Pushing a T-72S down the middle in order to defend against any oncoming pushes right here, because I don't really have anything there. I have my T-55s, but they're not really in a good position to fire, and I'm expecting that there's at least one tank in that tree line. Now in the meanwhile, my helicopters got spotted. You can see that this thing is really terribly stabilized, and with 5% stabilizer, those rockets were all over the place. This is where it got a bit tight, because my helicopter started taking fire. I believe it got hit once. The Ninja, though, only carries 4 missiles. So here's what's going to happen. He shot down my helicopter with a second missile. He turned around, tried to get a shot at the other helicopter, missed it, and this is when I knew that this helicopter was going to go through. Because this missile can only do 5 HE damage. So it can only do 5 damage to a helicopter. This helicopter has 8 strength, so even if it gets hit, it's still not going to go through all of its hit points. It's going to survive and carry on. You can see that the thing did hit, and that's perfect to me. Now, I have 10 rockets for 1 CV. The thing is, I am not worried about killing the CV. I got different units for that. What I just want to do is spot the helicopter, or spot the command vehicle. At the same time, I was being shadowed by the OH-1 Ninja, and there was a gun tank coming up on my rear, so I had to move quick. But there's the CV. Marked it for myself, and I just did a complete flyby. I do not want to stay in this zone, because this one is not really the one that's going to be doing the damage. The one that's going to be doing the damage is this one, my long-range artillery unit that I just had enough points to buy. First round's in the air, you can see it flying off. I was trying to snipe the command vehicle, but Schnitzel saw that coming. You can see he's moving the CV to a different position. I didn't know exactly where it was, but I thought, okay, if he's going to move it, he's probably going to hop it over from one tree line to the next. So I put down an attack marker where I thought it would be, and I started hammering that position next with artillery. And you can still see the outline of the vehicle right there, so I was right about that. If you are moving a CV, make sure you move it to an unpredictable location. So a location that you could be using was, for example, there. Because who would move their CV out into the open? It just wouldn't make sense. This helicopter is blind as a bat. It only has poor optics, so it would not be able to spot the new position of the CV anyway. Something that I did notice, though, when I was playing against Schnitzel is that he had not captured any of the other zones, whereas I was getting a consistent +7, he was still sitting at +3. So the amount of units that he could buy were not that good. And this is something that he should really look out to in the next, let's say the next game that he plays. Capture more zones. You're not capturing enough zones, you're not getting enough income. No income means you have a pretty weak position because you cannot fill up gaps, you cannot defend, you cannot really send out a quick response force if you're going to get attacked anywhere. Now my helicopter was perfectly safe over on the other flank. It is slowly but steadily running out of fuel. So what I decided to do is just move it down south here in order to try and find anything that was either shooting at it or if it would fly into an enemy helicopter. If it wouldn't, perfect, I would just go back to the fob. Now my Mi-8 here, recon helicopter, is spotting a K1. And the interesting thing is that Schnitzel typed in chat, okay, where's your infantry? I went, what infantry? He thought that those two Mi-8s had dropped off infantry here. And I wouldn't be surprised if he went looking for it. You can see that his OH Ninja is still here. It's being rearmed. He has a KV-107, probably because he thinks that I'm dropping off my infantry there, which I really wasn't planning. And over on the left, I could have dropped my infantry off there, but if you do it over here, you don't really have a good position. You have to go across the bridge, which is a really weak spot for infantry. And there's no really other way to get there quickly. You could take that bridge, but again, I wouldn't recommend it. So dropping off infantry here is really only viable for me from this flank. Alright, back to the battle. I spotted the K1, I just didn't have any ATGM in here to deal with that. So I sent forward an Mi-24P, fully aware that there might be an enemy AA unit there. I know that there's at least one gun tank, I know that there's a short arrow AA unit, but I also want to try and either damage the tank or kill it altogether, and I did get one hit on the missile. Then I decided, no, this is too risky. Let's just pull it away, because it's an 80-point helicopter, I don't want to get too close. Those short arrow systems, even though their name says short arrow, have a range of 3.3 kilometers. So you have to be really bloody careful with those things, or they're just going to snipe you from afar. And meanwhile, I did another run with my seed aircraft, but the seed didn't really find anything that run, because he was turning off his AA radars, which is a really good strategy. So the next thing you're going to see me do once the seed is going to come in is do a double team. A double team is what I mean with sending in two different aircraft. So the one aircraft I'm going to send in is the seed, which, if it's going to fly over, is going to try and activate or force him to activate the radars. Because if a plane is flying that way, let's say that the cursor is the aircraft, if an enemy AA position is over there, it can easily fire at the seed aircraft without any risk. So instead, I decided to go in with two aircraft. One of them would be the seed aircraft to try and trick him into activating his radars. The second one would be an ATGM aircraft. And the second one would be the one that would be actually dealing the damage. You can see that double team coming in and, yep, here it is. Here's the seed aircraft. This one is just there to activate the radars. This one is the actual damage dealer. Because an AT missile with pretty decent accuracy, 3 kilometer range and 30 armor penetration is guaranteed to kill any kind of AT or AA vehicle. So you can see my seed aircraft is not detecting anything. It's flying over, and then he activated his radars. Because right now my missile cannot directly fly to the ground. Otherwise it would have to make a pretty damn straight angle downwards, which is something that just cannot be done. This one was a bit risky, but my seed was flying so fast and so far that he couldn't see it. You can see that the missile is just veering off course. As these two are being distracted by my seed aircraft, here is the missile that's actually doing the damage. And there's the gun tank dead. So if you see a seed aircraft come in, beware. It might be a trap, the one that I just posted like that. Evacing my seed aircraft, which only took 2 blocks of damage, so it's not doing too bad. And the anti-tank sniper is completely okay. Didn't take any kind of damage, but I did score another AA kill. 55 points. You don't get that many gun tanks in your deck. I don't know how many he had, but I think about 7 is what you can get as the best availability. So with that, I know that there are now 6 of these, and actually 5 because I already sniped one of the gun tanks before. Right now, I'm just reinforcing my positions everywhere. I'm getting a few more reconnaissance units towards the middle, which is a group of Kampfschwimmer. Exceptional stealth, but they apparently had some pretty damn good spotters, because these guys unfortunately did not live very long. Over on the left, my position is pretty weak, but if there's HEGMs in here, it's not easy for me to get more vehicles in here, so I have to be careful with that. Also, I had one Mi-8 TV parked over here on the left in order to defend against an oncoming heli push, if he would do something like I just did. Bringing in a couple of Tuncha mortar systems to help me with either suppressing infantry, just dealing damage, or putting up a smoke screen if I want to. Because my goal really is to start pushing into Elena, and from there I'm going to need smoke, because I can either not reach this forest safely, or once I'm going to move towards the next position, I'm going to need smoke to get there. Besides, mortars are just a really useful system to have. They can really make life a lot easier on you. A couple of infantry units spotted here, but the Kampfschwimmer went up way too far. Getting spotted by, I'm not exactly sure what. Possibly just by these guys. Just these units. Because he didn't really have any recon in there that was spotting it. The Hachi Nanashiki was surely hell not spotting it. So much for my recon. My tank got a few shots off, but not too much. And I'm gonna have to start pulling this thing back, because it fired and they know where it is. In the meanwhile though, I was a bit distracted over on the right, because he started to come in with more vehicles. The K1, not a particularly expensive tank, but no less dangerous. And somehow he managed to shoot down my SU-22 M4, which is the anti-tank unit. So much for my tank sniper. At the same time, he was pushing in with a couple of engineers with flashes, so his napalm units, a few more infantry units, and my SFL was trying to suppress those. He got 1 kill, but over here on the left I'm not doing too well either, because the K1 outranges the anti-tank range of my infantry, so I have to be really careful with this push. And by now he's leading by 150 points. It's not that much, it's just, let's say, the price of one expensive tank. But I still have to be a bit more careful and start to reinforce this position. Bring in a double team of an Mi-8 recon helicopter as well as a Mi-24P with Kokons. Fired 1 missile into the K1. The second one missed because I lost recon of it. Getting these things away again, because I'm not sure what kind of AA they had, but they were able to shoot down my anti-tank plane. So I don't want to keep my other aerial units in here for too long, with risk of them getting shot down as well. Spotted a unit moving across, a short arrow. Short arrow was probably going to go this way. So I thought, well, I may want to start and gear up that way. Did a large bombing run on this forest, with my seed aircraft as a defensive unit and 2 heavy bombers. But that didn't really work out, and I lost 1 bomber there for another 140 points, while only getting 15 points in return, so that was a very, very bad trade of mine. Short arrow stopped here, and I'm not sure if he was aware that I saw where it was, but make sure that if you have a unit like that and you think it might have been detected, move it. Make sure it's not there anymore. Because my first response, of course, is going towards that position, and I wouldn't be surprised if I actually splashed it. Yep, it's now shaken. Now he's moving it away. Second round landing almost on the unit, but slightly behind it. Completely stunned it. the same time, I was pushing over here with my Motoshutsen. Motoshutsen got nailed by a Hachi Nanashiki recon. And I was going to need to bring in some reinforcements, because this position was slowly but steadily getting overrun. You can see especially that K1 is causing all sorts of problems. So I'm trying to do a pretty aggressive push with a BMP-2. Way too aggressive, of course. And the infantry just easily takes it out. Helicopters come in again. Didn't find the K1 because again it managed to pull back into cover. Unfortunately, my infantry is in a pretty bad shape. My SFL is almost out of fuel. And these ones cannot see the K1. And I'm not confident enough to push in here to deal with any kind of recon or AA position that they might have there. So again, pulling the helicopters away. We had a bit of a skirmish here with a K1 versus a T-72S. T-72S had taken one hit and I decided to pull it back. I do not want to keep that thing out there for too long. Because this is one of my 8 expensive tanks that I can field. They're the best tanks I have, so I have to be really careful with these things. And of course, against a heavy tank, they're not really going to last that long. If you would pit this thing against the Leopard 2A5, the 2A5 would win every single time. So that's why I'm pulling this thing slightly back and backing it up with a couple of helicopters. Of course, that is when I start to get sniped by the short arrow. Just look at the range of that thing. This is 3.3 kilometers. So make sure that your helicopters are not that close. Because I just lost another 80-point unit. By now, I don't even have half the points that he has, so I was really not playing very well. That's completely down to me. That's not down to the deck. The deck has some really good units, but I was just not really in shape today. Pushing up with the T-72S to try and get that AA unit with a long-range missile, which is the Sphere anti-tank guided missile. Unfortunately, of course, I don't have any recon, so I don't know where it is. Bad choice to push up this aggressively, because, of course, there's a tank there, and it's just gonna start shooting me. These tanks were engaging each other with pretty damn good accuracy, 76% versus 68%. I won because I had more health and more armor. Immediately getting this thing back. It's done its job, it's taken some damage, and I don't want to gift him another 135 points. Now at this stage I was a bit worried. I was going, okay, this guy has 275 points more than I do. How am I going to turn this around? A way that I could turn it around was go at it with full numbers, because I had more income than he did, or at least for a long time. And that could have helped me push in here safely. But pushing into a position is risky, because you are going up against a position that's pretty easy to defend, especially over here. This is a pretty good position for me to defend. So attacking for him wouldn't be a very good option. Attacking for me is pretty much attacking into a blind forest where I don't know what's in there. I know that there's some sort of AA shooting down my bombers, possibly there or in the middle. I know they can see my units crossing because there's a Hachi Nanashiki there. So I have to be either defensive, wait for him to make a mistake, or go full on offensive. And the last thing is not really what I wanted to do. Got a 10-point kill there, probably a reconnaissance unit pushing in, or no, it's not a recon, that's a transport. But it was just 10 points. That was it. There was no real threat inside. So I knew that there was still going to be infantry near. And this was pretty much a precursor to an incursion into this flank, which I was rather worried about. You can see Chokyon-sa coming in. I activate my machine gun on the recon to try and deal with the Chokyon-sa. But Schnitzel had this thing done really, really well. Because this was not the only thing that he was pushing with. I thought that this would be his move, just get some recon in there. This was the threat, a K1A1. Now, 255s are no match for one K1A1. He's just going to completely one-shot them. So pulling back, the only unit that I want to engage here, or that I'm pretty secure that I can at least deal some damage with, is the LSTR-40s. Now he was pushing on this flank. He was also moving on that flank, and I'm sorry about that. I think ping from WhatsApp. So, he was pushing on this flank. I was trying to get my units away, but he killed off my reconnaissance, or my AT there. No, my Tor, my AA there. T-55 trying to slug it out with a K1. Not really going to work. And the Chukyon Sa versus an LSTR 40 group. Not really a good option either. But I know he was distracted here. So I was gearing up for a sneaky side run there. Two Mi-24s split up intentionally so that they're not flying in close formation, which makes for an easier AA target. And a recon helicopter to do the spotting for them. We're just parking them there, so that later on I can start and try and flank this position. T-72S, T-72M1 coming in. I don't have a lot of recon, so I'm getting that fixed as soon as possible. And you can see the SPW-40 is already on the way. The LSTRs here, there's just one survivor. He's not going to survive too long because I saw this come in and I thought, okay, that's it. 2 grenade launcher vehicles with infantry against 1 LSTR. Yeah, that's not going to work. And it didn't, unfortunately. My ATGM vehicles that I had over here, the Concours and the T-72S, tried to help out, but they just couldn't do it. So again, this flank is pretty weak for me right now. Really, he can push right through with those tanks, nail the T-72S, nail the ATGM vehicle. I got no AA. A helicopter push could have easily flanked this position and pushed right in. So I'm pulling my mortars back slightly in order to have at least a bit more lead if he is going to go for my units. Sniped another AA vehicle there. And that's when my seed aircraft gets downed by the short arrow. In the meanwhile, sending over my attack group. And I'm not sure if he can see it yet. Let's see. No, he has no clue where they are. Aside from that, he only has the gun tank in this forest in Fedor, but that's it. So he was just so focused on the push in his forest here and the push with the K1A1 here that he didn't really focus on what's going on behind his lines. Which is perfect for me because these units were the ones that completely turned the game around. Even though he was leading by 500 points at this stage because I was completely messing up every move I did. Except that one. So, again, spotted the CV, helicopters immediately going in for the kill, and I got the CV. That's one down. Recon unit trying to spot whatever else there might be, but at least he cannot call an aircraft or reinforcements. So, moving on to the next zone, which is this one. I'm going for this zone next, because this is the easiest one to get back to the FOB right quick. This one's going to take a little bit more time. Spotted a gun tank, which immediately started hammering into my helicopters. Mi-24P took a lot of damage. The second one fired off a missile that actually killed it. So both of my helicopters at this stage are still alive. The recon helicopter is taking quite a few damage. I'm taking quite a lot of damage. And there's the CV. I spotted it, and you can see there it's lighting up again. Rocket pods going into the CV. Second CV down. 1 to go. Short arrow managed to nail my recon, which was a bit unfortunate, and the second helicopter is taking a lot of damage. And I think that is when this one is out of ammo. It's already done a lot of damage, so I don't really mind that this thing ran out of ammo. Especially considering that this is what saved me. Now I'm going to steal his FOB with a helicopter. I'm landing my helicopter right next to his FOB. And this way, I can start claiming it and I can start to just repair my stuff and rearm my helicopters with his FOB. It's a really nasty thing to do, but it works like a charm. That's when a helicopter popped in, a KV-107. I engaged it with the machine gun or the autocannon that's mounted on the Mi-24P. That's when I saw a threat come in. There, OH Ninja, pushing in and killing off my helicopter. So my first response was, okay, get the helicopter in the air. That's the worst thing you can do if you're dealing with a helicopter that can only engage ground or air-based units. So I saw, no, don't take off. Land it back there, because if it's landed, he cannot fire at you. And that's exactly what happened. My helicopter is now classed as a ground-based vehicle. It cannot get attacked by air-to-air missiles. If this thing would take off, the ninja would have shot it down instantly. Instead, if I have a helicopter on the ground, that does not mean it's not active. You can see it firing its autocannon and going right into the ninja there. And I managed to nail the ninja, 90 points. So I really pulled back the point difference there. At the same time, he was still doing a pretty decent aggression push here, but he was not pushing towards the buildings. These were the positions that you really want to get to. And in the meanwhile, my mortars and my artillery units were starting to open up, starting to bring in a flame panzer in order to deal with the infantry from a safer range and start to just barbecue them. My helicopter was pushing in here, but I was a bit jumpy about the amount of AA that there might be here. Let's see what he has actually. Nothing. So I just could have easily pushed in there. I didn't know that at the time, so my best bet was to not push in there. I was just going to wait for the CV to come to me. So I'm just going to hover somewhere around this position, have the helicopter there, and if it spots anything, which is not that likely with poor optics, it could still nail it. Since we had quite a bit of time left in this match, I also decided to bring in an Mi-8 with a command infantry, and this is why I have my command infantry in a helicopter, because they're way more mobile that way. So flying around and trying to get around Fedor or around Anna into Fedor and drop off infantry there, so I can start pushing in with the rest of my forces and just do a complete hammer and anvil attack there. But at this point, Schnitzel decided that enough was enough and that he just really couldn't survive this for much longer. So my helicopter, again, being rearmed, being repaired, just landing right next to his fob. A few more points are being scored here and there. Nanayon Shiki trying to engage my tank, so I'm pulling this thing away as fast as I possibly can. Well, I'm also bringing in a couple of DHS Mi-24Ps, which are far more heavily armored, and trying to get that tank. About 20 seconds left now. You can see I'm bringing in more infantry, trying to secure this position. T-72S is engaging the Nanayon Shikiji, which is not a good thing for the Nanayon Shikiji. Missile flies in, nails the tank, and now this tank can start to work on the infantry here with his main gun. And that's when Schnitzel said, okay, you won, I surrender. But really, he damn near had me. He was so close that the difference really was only 20 points. And that's 20 points in his favor. He got more points that match than I did, but I still managed to win. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this match. For me it was a very intense one because I thought, oh my god, I'm just going to lose this. It's going to be a horrible display of this deck. Instead, it worked out remarkably well. So Schnitzel, thanks for the game. Make sure you capture more zones next time. As for me, I gotta make sure I have more recon next time, because I just kept losing units that I really shouldn't have lost. With that, I hope you enjoyed the game. If you want to use the deck that I was using, you can find it in the description. Just hit the import button and you can try this deck out for yourself. Let me know what you think of the match, let me know what you think of the deck, and I'll be seeing you soon with more campaigning from Wargame European Escalation.